So you found the space. It's perfect size, great center, but the rent is just a little too high. So what do? You do what you've done every other time and what every other operator does. You go to war over the rent. You counter, the landlord counters back, and you ultimately just split the difference. But for some weird reason, you feel like you won. The reality is that rent number was never really going to change that much. And while you were fighting over $1 per square foot, you just glazed over and signed off on 5 other things that will actually determine if this site is going to be profitable. I'm Kyle and Sarah, and this is Close Monday. And today we're talking about the things you should be negotiating your lease today because it's not the rent. Otter isn't just a POS. It's the operating system for your restaurant. With Otter, you can manage in-store and online orders, update menus, and track sales across all your channels from one single dashboard. Otter helps restaurants grow, built-in loyalty, automated marketing, and tools that help drive repeat customers. Plus, with Otter Revenue Recapture, you can automatically dispute delivery chargebacks, helping recover thousands in lost revenue over time. From kiosks and kitchen display systems to handhelds at the table, Otter's hardware is designed to keep both the front and back of the house running smoothly. Join thousands of restaurants switching to Otter to simplify operations, save money, and scale smarter. Visit tryotter.com or click the link in the show notes. All right, quick framing before we get into this. I want to be clear that this episode is for anybody, independent, multi-unit, franchise operators, anybody whose name is going to be on the lease. You should be checking out this episode. So I say that because I feel like sometimes the episodes can go one way or the other. And I ran into a couple people at the restaurant show that were kind of like, well, is this for me? I don't know. Should I be listening to the show? I want to be clear. This episode and 99% of the episodes are for everybody. You know, the way it gets approached, some of the growth stuff or the real estate stuff may be different depending on if you're a franchise or independent. But in general, it's always for anybody who's looking to own a restaurant. So now that we cleared that up, I hope, let's get into what we're talking about today, which is negotiating things other than the rent. And what nobody tells you and what nobody's ever really mentions is that the rent is kind of a trap. And I get it because it's the most visible number on the page and it's where everybody kind of always picks their battle, but it's really just a number. I mean, it's human nature to feel like you're going to want to shop that number around in your head and to other brokers and to other landlords rather, and get the number that you want. But think about what that rent actually is. The landlord is setting that number based on the market, based on what the last tenant paid, based on what tenants down the street are paying, comps in the market, things like that. But the reality is that there's a floor and there's a ceiling. You should educate yourself and find out what that is. We talk about that all the time. But in general, right now, every market has a pretty narrow band for the type of space that you're looking at. So you might move it 5% one way. You might move it 10% in a super soft market, but that's really it. That's all you're going to do. You're not going to get 25, 30% off the rent. It's just not going to happen. And I've seen guys blow up their own deals by suggesting anything like 25 or 30% below market. So don't do that. But meanwhile, you have a lease that's 25, 30, 75 pages long, and there are a number of other clauses in that document that you should be paying attention to, and nobody's fighting for those. They're kind of just taking them for what they are. And the reality is the landlord's attorney wrote that lease to protect the landlord. So I can get into a whole thing about why you need to hire a certain type of landlord. Maybe I will do that. But this is not a conspiracy. They're not angling against you. It's just business. I'll write the lease. And of course, it's going to favor me. You want to fix it? That job is on you. So you fix it by negotiating these 5 things that are arguably more important than the rent. So let's go ahead and get into it. And why not start with this one? Why not start with everybody's favorite topic? TI, tenant improvement allowance. This is money that the landlord's going to give you to fund your build out. Real money, okay? This is actual dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. Here's where most operators get it wrong. They see the TI number that the landlord offers and they just take it. They're afraid that they're going to take it away, they're going to cut it in half, or they're going to shop it around to somebody else. But you always got to push back against that, particularly if you've done your homework. You know what you need to build out this infrastructure. So ask for the actual dollar amount. You're not going to get it if you don't ask for it. But there's another part of this. There are 3 other components of the TI that you need to be paying attention to that make a huge difference in terms of its impact on your business. Number 1 is the amount, obviously. But number two is when you get the money. A lot of TI is paid as a reimbursement. So you've already spent the money and you're open. That's a major cash flow problem for a lot of you. Because if you just laid out money for infrastructure that you're not getting back until you've opened, that's money you could have put towards advertising, for marketing, for staffing, for whatever. You got to push for milestone payments, meaning some at permit, some at construction, and then some at open. The third thing you're going to want is to cover when you get paid. Most TI you get paid out in reimbursements, meaning you spent the money and now you're going to get it back at some point, most likely after you've opened. Not a huge help, right? There's a big difference between money you get in intervals versus money you get after you've opened, where you could have used that money for something else. So what I say is you should always push for milestone payments. Some at permitting time, another at a point in construction, and the third one within 30 days of when you open. That is giving you a little bit of a cushion to manage your cash flow during this time where things pop up unexpectedly, or you really are being tight, as you should, with the money that you have on hand to open up this store. So that's crucial. The amount and the term. And the third thing is what it covers. Now, get in ready. Hard costs, soft costs, permits, architectural, spell it all out. Be crystal clear of what this is going to be spent on, because TI dollars that you have to float for 6 months are nowhere equal to TI dollars that you get up front. So make sure you know that difference. Number two, rent commencement. Now, this is one that will quietly eat restaurant owners and operators, eat you alive, because rent commencement is the date that your rent clock starts. So there are two dates that actually matter. The day you get the keys and the day you start paying rent. Two completely different days, ideally. Now, between those two dates, you're building out, you're permitting, you're training, you're not making any money. So think about that. If your rent starts the day you get the keys, you're paying full rent on a box that you haven't built out yet, let alone in any position to take customers. And construction takes long, always longer than what you anticipate. You guys know that. But what you want is a rent commencement that is tied to opening the doors, meaning you got customers coming in, you got cash flow coming in the door. Or at a minimum, a fixed rent period where you pay no rent in a period that's long enough to cover a realistic build out. Now, you will negotiate on those days, months pretty aggressively, but here's what most people miss. You got to build in a cushion for permitting. They're going to fight you for that. I understand that. But if your build out is 90 days, do not negotiate 90 days of free rent. Negotiate more. You need to cover that permitting time. I mean, do some homework and find out how long it's taking to get permits. Ask the contractor. Ask other operators in the area, because if there is one constant in this entire process for every single person listening or watching this show, it's that the building department does not give a shit about when your lease starts. They're on their own schedule. Have you ever walked into a building department? I was just in a building department here. I won't say where. It was like 1964 in there. It was brutal. I don't know how they're operating. They say they're moving over to digital, but they are not prioritizing it. Let's just say that. So it's not shocking to me if the permitting process takes longer than anticipated. Every week you can shave off from the front end is a week of rent that you never have to pay. That's just pure margin. So that's something a lot of folks miss. Now, the third term, exclusive use. Literally just dealing with this before I jumped on this show. This is what protects your concept. This is your moat. But most people think of it as the direct competitor. So you're a burger place. You don't want another burger place in your shopping center. That's a major problem. People going there mainly for burgers. Obviously, you don't want that. But the thing that people miss is an exclusive clause is a clause that you can also put in there that says, hey, I don't want anybody else in here where X percentage, let's just say 30% of their revenue comes from hamburgers, because that's straight up stealing from your main source of revenue. You don't have another way to go. This other concept has another way to go. They could start selling sandwiches or salads, whatever else they sell, but you can't control if people are going to really like their burger. And if they do, you're just out of luck because you agreed to it. So you need to just make sure that the language is tight. You don't want to have any ambiguity when it comes to that. So we just negotiated something for a landlord, for a tenant here. They wanted a blanket fried chicken exclusive, but their core business is hot chicken. So they were saying, we want the full fried chicken if they'll give it to us, but we also don't want anybody coming here with a hot chicken sandwich on their deli menu or what other kind of, hot chicken taco. We don't want anybody to come in here if they have more than 20% of their gross sales coming from that particular item. Sometimes they'll push as a percentage of the menu. That's BS because it could be one item on the menu, but just happens to be that what everybody's drawn to. So you can also navigate it based on percentage of sales. But do yourself a favor, get in writing. Don't make it broad, make it very specific. This way, if there's ever any issue, you can go back and point to that. And bring this up because just had this happen as well, co-tenancy clause. Now, if you're in a shopping center with a big anchor box and that box is leaving, let's say Whole Foods decides, hey, you know what? This store's not working for us. We're out of here. But the whole reason that you're there is because that Whole Foods was driving traffic. What happens to you? Your main reason for being there, your main driver is gone. Do you get a rent reduction? Do you get the right to terminate? If that center and that store is half the reason that you signed, that needs to be in the lease. So remember that. The fourth one, I don't even know if I could tell the story about this one because it's a little too close to home because of what just happened here, but assignment and subletting. Now, this is your exit strategy. This is how things start to go the wrong way. It's not working. You're not making any money. Your partners are just, butting heads, or for whatever reason you want out. You need a clear strategy because assignment and subletting language controls whether you can hand this lease to somebody or not. And I'm going to tell you right now, here's why it matters more than you think, because I have seen a lease that says you've got one shot to present somebody to us to either take over this lease or sublet from you. And if we don't like them, we can revoke your lease. There's a little bit more to it. I won't get into all the details, but that's called a revocation. That's called a recapture right the landlord has. And look, your lease is an asset or liability. You could look at it that way, but it depends on that clause. It truly depends on what that looks like. Typically it looks like, yeah, you can assign it to somebody so long as they match your financial standing or your type of operations or your type of restaurant or your level of expertise, whatever. But you need to have it in there one way or the other. Because if you ever want to sell it, the first thing the buyer is going to say is, hey, I want to see a copy of the lease. Most landlords make that language very, very tricky. They require landlord consent. They leave the word consent to be very vague, but your job is to fix that. And your attorney's job is to fix that because the language you want is to not be unreasonably withheld, conditioned, or delayed. That has to be in there because that one sentence will determine if this is a lease that you can assign to somebody else and you can walk away, or one that you're kind of just stuck with until the end of the term. So huge difference there. But I get it, right? You're not signing this lease at a time when you're thinking things are going to go bad, right? You're signing this lease at a time where you're excited to be opening up a store. But think of it this way. You're also not planning on being there forever. Think with the end in mind. Think that you're going to need some sort of option as an exit strategy. Because if you're looking for it on the day you need it and it's not there, that's going to be a real problem for you. So think about your exit strategy and make sure what that exit strategy is outlined specifically in the lease. The fifth term, personal guarantee. This is a big one because personal guarantee means that if the business cannot pay the rent, the landlord could come after your personal assets, your house, your savings, your cars, whatever they want to come after, they can come after. Now, I get it. A lot of you guys are going to say, well, I signed this lease as an LLC. My LLC is going to back this lease. Do you think the landlord doesn't know that you just set this LLC up 2 weeks ago? They want you to sign personally for it. Otherwise, there is no lease. You're not going to get it. So make sure you understand that. Landlords want it. And especially if you're a first-time operator, you may not be able to get a full-term personal guarantee. You may have no choice. As much as I preach, don't sign a full-term personal guarantee, you might not have a choice. But in my experience, you can almost always negotiate something less stringent than a full-term personal guarantee. You want it limited, not unlimited. The best version of what's out there and that we often use is called a burn off or a burn down. And that's where the guarantee shrinks over time. So long as you're paying rent and you're being a good tenant. It could, if you negotiate properly, it could disappear entirely after year 2 or 3. You can also cap it. You can make it a fixed dollar amount, cap it at the number of months rent. The point is unlimited personal guarantees for a full-term 10-year lease are one of the most dangerous aspects of that document. Do not sign it without some kind of fight. A burn off or a burn down, or you put a cap on it. All right, so to bring this to a close here, the 5 terms you're going to focus on. TI. Get more, get it sooner, and get it in writing. Rent commencement. Start the clock when you open and build in a cushion for permitting. Exclusive use, you want to protect your concept, and you also want to protect the co-tenancy. Assignment. You're going to want to think about your exit strategy from day 1. And personal guarantee, limit it, cap it, burn it off. But here's the real true takeaway of this show. The rent number is the number that everybody negotiates and the one that has the least flexibility. These 5 terms are the ones that nobody is really paying that much attention to, but they're the ones that are determined if you're going to make money here or you're not. So stop fighting for fights you can't win and look for other ways to make it happen. Start fighting on these 5 and just watch where this gets you. All right, that's it for today. If this was useful to you at all, please share it. Love if you shared it with a partner, with another restaurant down the street, with somebody who you know is about to sign a lease. That'd be great timing. Or better yet, send this to somebody who just told you they're bragging about signing a lease that was $1 less than the market rent. That's probably the person that needs this the most. I'm Kyle and Sarah, and this is Close Monday. I'll see you guys next week.